Hi, welcome back everyone to the next episode of Things That Bug Me. Today is actually a very special episode because I have with me today my mother. Her name is Pat, and she lives in the UK, where I've spent most of my life. I now live in Spain, but she lives in the UK, and I believe her moan concerns the roads in the UK. So, Matt, over to you. Have your whinge. I won't interrupt you for the first part of it. You're free to get up ahead of steam and moan as you will for the first little section. If I do interrupt you, it'll just for a clarifying question or something, right? But otherwise, the floor is yours, and away you go.
Okay.
And thank you for coming.
Right.
It's nice to have you here.
That's all right. Right. Well, my moan, the thing that bugs me enormously, is partly the state of the roads in England, and partly what it costs drivers to use those very, very horrible roads at the moment. We pay a great deal of money uh, in order to use roads as drivers. We pay an annual road tax. The cost of petrol is probably 5 times what it ought to be because of the amount of tax that is incorporated into the cost. We also have to have our cars inspected every year, which is another expense. It's called an MOT. But all this money is going to the government, but they don't seem to spend it on the roads that we drivers are using. Now, I moan about the state of the roads if I say that there are potholes everywhere. These potholes are sometimes enormous. They damage cars. You can't always see them because if it's been raining, they fill up
Just looks like a
as
puddle. Yeah.
puddles. And you drive through them, and the next thing you know, you're having to take your car into the garage to have something repaired. The government keeps promising to give local authorities extra money to fix these potholes, but it just doesn't seem to happen. And when it does, when the local authorities or whoever come along and tarmac over the potholes, as soon as we get some ice and rain, heavy rain in the winter, it opens them up again and they're even bigger. And then the whole thing starts again. The other thing that bugs me about the roads is roadworks everywhere, whether you're driving on motorways or little country lanes, somebody is digging those up. And it's not to repair potholes either. No, it's for water mains, it's for gas mains, it's for sewage, it's for electricity, it's for phone lines, whatever. But you drive along and there's a sign saying road closed. Well, sometimes it gives you a date from to, but other times it doesn't. Sometimes you do get a warning before the closure actually happens. A few days beforehand, there'll be a notice by the side of the road saying this road is going to be closed from to for waterworks or whatever. But you don't always get notification. And then you're looking at perhaps having to do a diversion of 20 or 30 miles to get back to where you were originally. This is something very annoying, and it's even more annoying when, as you drive up to the roadworks, there's nobody working there. And this can go on sometimes day after day. The road is
Yeah, no, fair enough.
closed.
Because I mean, it's fair enough. They do have to maintain infrastructure, water, electricity, so on. But they should do it as quickly as possible to minimize inconvenience
But they
and not have the
don't.
roadworks to.
They
Yeah, no,
don't.
fair enough. Fair enough. I was about
And
to
it's
back
not,
on that, but fair enough.
and it's not necessarily government or local authority that causes these delays. It's the water companies, it's the gas companies, it's the electrical companies. These all have a say, and they're digging holes in the road all the time. So that's my other bug. And of course, after they've dug holes to repair whatever they're repairing, um, the surface afterwards is not as good as it was before.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's my other bug. So all of these things are down to government, local authorities, and providers of water, gas, electricity, and so forth. But it makes a driver's life a nightmare. It really does. And in addition to the cost of driving on Britain's roads, um, I forgot what I was going to say. That's good,
Oh,
isn't it?
that's fine because I've got one or two questions for you anyway. So the potholes, are they on all grades of road? I mean, do you see big
Yes,
potholes on the main roads as well, like on the dual
yes.
carriageways, or is it just on the sort of smaller peripheral roads? Okay.
Mostly on smaller roads, but they are on A roads as well.
I mean,
Not on the motorways. The motorways they seem to be able to manage to keep in reasonable good nick, but
well, I guess there's a
yes,
much more dramatic safety issue involved on the motorways, right? Someone hits
yes,
a pothole at 80 and
I think
turns the
that's
car over. Yeah, 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 yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's true. But yeah,
So
all other roads.
if I can try and home in on what it is that actually bugs you, right? So you is it the inconvenience and damage to car and extra time and so on, or is it the sort of sense of broken contract that you're paying money for this and it's
Both,
not being done? Um,
both.
the sort of unjustness of that.
Yeah, both. Every aspect of what the condition of the roads is very, very, very upsetting.
I mean, the other thing that you mentioned was the notion that even when the roads are fixed, even when the potholes are filled, or the roadworks are completed and the road resurfaced, that it's a shitty job that's done. It's a band-aid, and so it's within a year or two, it's all broken up again anyway, right?
Oh,
Like it's not
doesn't
not even a
doesn't
year or two. You're
necessarily
saying, few months. Yeah, I mean, there's actually a
exactly.
similar situation here. And to a certain extent, I don't know what you feel about this, but to a certain extent, I have some sympathy for the local authorities. Because I mean, and here it's even worse than it is where you are. But you live in Shropshire, and so it's a pretty low population density with lots and lots of little windy country roads that don't have all that many cars on them. And so you can sort of see how not very many people paying into the tax pot, many kilometers of road to maintain, that it's a difficult equation to balance. You can sort of have some sympathy for that. But then I guess the argument would be, what are we paying road taxes for? What are we paying MOT charges for? What are we paying high petrol charges for if that money is not being redistributed to local authorities to help them do these
Exactly.
kinds of things? Yeah.
Exactly. If we're paying for the use of the roads, then why are the roads not maintained using that money?
So I wonder
So
whether. Oh, sorry. Go on. No, finish your thought. Sorry.
no, well, what happens with everything is it all goes into a pot, and then the government decides how they're going to spend the money from that pot. They don't look at where the money came from, who's paying that money in. It's just in a pot that they can use in whatever way they want. And if it means that they use the pot to give themselves an increase in salary,
Yeah.
that's how our road tax money is used.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that in a sense true with all taxation, that it's collected, it goes into a pot, and then after that, we don't really, we don't really know, and B, we don't really have any say in how it's
Yeah,
allocated from that moment
yeah,
forward.
and it's very unfair. It used to
Certainly
be
is.
many, many, many years ago
Or was it no
that the system.
taxation without representation? That was the cry of the American independence movement, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But many, many years ago, when you were working, you paid a national insurance into the pot, but it wasn't into the pot then. That you knew that that money that you'd paid in, you were going to get back when you retired as your pension. Nowadays, it doesn't necessarily work
No,
that
it
way.
all goes into one gigantic pot. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very unfair. But I still have another bug about roads,
Well,
slightly off
yeah.
this subject.
So if I could just pause you there, I would much rather you come back on a second time with a different bug, right? And we'll do another episode in a few weeks, whatever, of things that bug me with your other bug, because I want to go. Because the third part of this is a sort of attempt to perform some kind of alchemy on this thing? Like how can this unjust thing, I mean, and fair enough, right? Money is paid to maintain the roads, and that money is not spent on maintaining the roads. Instead, it's spent on whatever, wars or propaganda or
Yep.
MP salaries or whatever, tax breaks for corporations or whatever, right? Like it's not actually spent on the things it's supposed to be
Yep.
spent on, and fair enough. So I wonder if we can find a way to take that and and by looking at it in a different way, how could that actually change the world for the better? That's what the last part of this is about. And so I wonder, one thought has occurred to me, and so I'll run it by you and see what you think, and maybe we can have a conversation from there. So the idea of paying road tax, and then that, because there's a contract, right? There's at least an implied contract that, okay, I will pay road tax every year in exchange for which you maintain the road so that I can drive on them, right? Now, if they are not
Hmm.
fulfilling their end of the bargain, I think you would have a case for not fulfilling your end of the bargain, right? Withholding your road tax until such time as you are satisfied that the road tax that is being collected is being spent on the maintenance of the roads as it's supposed to be. And, that if people actually did that, it would, if enough people did that, it would create a furore, and the press would get involved, and the BBC would come in and do a report on it, and all of that kind of, and it would actually force the government to account for the money that it brings in road tax and how it spends it, right? By accumulating this kind of pressure. If
Mm.
people refused, you've not held up your end of the bargain, therefore I am absolved from holding up. This is how contracts work, right? If one party doesn't hold up their
Yeah.
end of the bargain, the contract is
Yeah.
dissolved. It's no longer in effect. And so yeah, I think that I don't know what you think, but that sounds to me like a very reasonable argument.
Sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
Would you be willing to do that? Would you be willing to refuse to pay your road tax next time it comes around? Instead of paying it, write a letter to the DVLA saying, given the state of the roads, I don't feel it's justified to collect road tax from you. You've not held up your end of the bargain, therefore I'm not holding up mine. And if you
Oh,
ever get prosecuted for it, this will be your defense in court. And I actually think I actually think it's a really good one. You might want to talk to a lawyer, but I actually think it's a really good one.
Dad, it would be interesting to talk to a lawyer about it. You're right. But I think the end of it is I would just get an enormous fine,
Which you then
and be
refuse to pay, right?
prosecuted.
And then what are they going to
Yeah.
do? I mean, are they really going to put an 82-year-old woman in jail for, taking a stand, taking a moral stand,
Mm.
making a political,
Mm.
it's essentially a political
Yes,
protest, essentially, is what you're
because
doing.
you're not dealing with people anymore in this world. You're dealing with machines and algorithms and
Yes, you are,
all
but
of the.
ultimately, at the end of the day, there is a person behind all of those things. And so,
Uh,
they're yeah, there are
mm.
people that can be held. It's hard. They try and obfuscate it and keep you away from the actual men and women who should be held to account, but they can be held to
Well,
account.
there are ministers for roads, and fat lot of good it does writing to them or complaining to them, because they just hide behind levels of bureaucracy.
Mm.
And
You remember Yes
it's
Minister and Yes Prime Minister? There
oh,
was a
I
bit in
do,
there where the
yes.
Department of
And
Education
there's
is the death of education, the Department of Industry is the death of industry, and the Department of the Environment, there lies the rotting corpse of the environment, right?
yeah,
The idea of
yeah.
creating a government department to actually destroy a thing rather than to make a thing better, but to destroy a thing. So yes, the
Well,
Department
many,
of Roads,
many,
Minister
many
of
years
Roads.
ago, I was friendly with a government minister because of my role in tourism, and he said there was nothing more true than Yes Minister. It
Mm.
was an absolute reflection of what went on in government. So there you are.
Yeah, I think Margaret Thatcher said that once as well, didn't she? Wasn't it her favourite show? And
She
she said,
may, she
all
may well
too
have said
close to
it.
the bone.
Yeah, she may well have said it, but I'm sure that it's true that it's not government that run the country, it's the civil service. And no matter how ministers change and prime ministers change and governments change, it's still the same civil servants sitting in their ivory towers that run the country.
Yeah, the civil service
So,
sort of represents resistance to change, right? In a systemic inertia.
yeah,
something like
Yeah.
that. Which, to be fair, does have a role to play. I mean, you can't just go chopping and changing for every new fad and every new person that comes along with what they think is a good idea. You know, you can't. There has to be some resistance to change in the system, so there is a role to play.
Yeah.
But then, not. It's like with everything, right? It's about striking the right balance.
Right. Right. Anyway, I mean, you could say that it's my choice to drive, that I could not drive, and then I wouldn't get so annoyed by things. But yes, I would, because even if I took taxis and got on buses, if there were any buses, which there aren't,
Yeah.
the holes would still be there, the damage would still be there, the roadworks would still be there, I'd still be delayed and sent off on diversions. So it really wouldn't make any difference, except that it would save me some money, not paying road tax and all the other ancillary costs.
The other thing that occurs to me, this could potentially be a really good idea, that the road taxes, rather than all going into all going to Swansea, right, to the DVLA, that there were regional pots for the road taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that and it's not a local authority thing, right? That members of the community in those areas, they step up, right, and they take responsibility for maintaining the roads, and they get paid for doing that, right? They take it out of the council thing, just funnel the money directly to the local organization that takes care of the roads. They can subsume that from the, you know, and that's their only job. They're not, it's not like the council, which has a billion things it has to take care of, right? This is their only job. Road taxes go to them in order to maintain roads. That's it. Take it out of the government, take it out of local authority, make it its own closed loop, like explicit, clear, easy, simple.
Wouldn't that be lovely? Yes, that would be very sensible, very straightforward, and very simple. Wouldn't it be nice if everything to do with running the country ran that way? Not just roads, everything, education, whatever.
Education is a little bit of a more complex thing. I mean, maintaining roads is relatively straightforward, right? You need to survey the roads, you need to have some kind of reporting system so that drivers can say, oh, by the way, there's a pothole here, and you know that goes into a thing and it gets prioritized and blah blah. You know, there's some stuff to be worked out, but road maintenance is relatively simple thing in the grand scheme of things. Whereas education, this is a much more complex beast. So anyway, but yeah, broadly speaking, this idea of the money is collected for this particular thing, it goes into that pot and it is distributed only within that particular thing, right? There's no, that idea of each pot being its own thing.
Yeah, that would make so much sense.
Mm.
And then we wouldn't have enough money left over nationally to wage war, and do all the other things
Well, we
that
would if we collectively wanted to, right? Like if we agreed that if collectively we agreed, God, with things like war, this could be an optional tax, right? Like if you agree with war, then you pay. Like happened in the. Do you remember there was war bonds, right? In the First and Second World War, there was the
yes,
opportunity to buy war bonds. You didn't have to; it wasn't a
yes,
tax, but you had the opportunity to buy war bonds to support the war effort financially if you wanted to. Something like that, right?
yeah,
Like optional tax for those kinds of things, for vanity projects, for war, for things which are not actually essential infrastructure. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, there's real potential in this idea of separating each of these domains, raising money and financing them independently of each other.
The
Hello,
kitty's
Kitty.
just Kitty has just woken up and decided to go back to sleep.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to add? I think
No,
we.
as I say, I have a separate bug, but if you want to,
Yeah,
it's
no. Come
still to
back on
do with
another time and do
roads.
your separate bug. Yeah, no. We can do a whole separate show on your separate bug. Yeah. No, I think that's better.
Okay. Well, that's really what I have to say, except that I think it's very, very unfair.
Mm. No question. No question. But actually, relatively easily rectified if there's a will to do it. And I don't suspect there is, because the government likes this idea of all the money coming into a pot and then they can spend it how they like
Yeah,
without any real scrutiny, right? I'm sure they love that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they do.
This would actually create accountability, transparent, like this idea of separating each domain from each other. And this would create accountability, transparency,
Yeah,
all the things that are currently lacking. And it would be very much harder to corrupt these things, right? Because they stand alone, they are much more visible. It'd be very much harder
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
corporations and special interests to infiltrate and corrupt these things.
I'm sure that there are reasons why there has to be a pot and that it wouldn't be feasible to run the country without having the pot, but
Well,
it
there
just
are
does
those that
seem
say
very
that
unfair.
taxation is not actually about raising money to spend on infrastructure. The point of taxation is to remove money from circulation. Government creates money out of thin air to spend on whatever they want. Like they've always got money. They can always find money for new walls, new
That's what.
infrastructure. So what there are those who argue that it's not about finding the money. It's about, once you've created the money, getting it out of circulation in order to control inflation. And this is the job of taxation, is to remove the money, the profligate amounts of money that the government created and put into circulation, to get it out of circulation through taxation. It's not
No.
about raising money, it's about getting rid of money.
If you say so.
Well, I'm just saying it is a view. I'm not saying it's correct or incorrect. I don't know enough about it to be able to say that, but I'm saying there are economists who believe that that is the purpose of taxation, not to raise money, but to eliminate money from circulation.
Okay.
It's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. It's a very different way of looking at things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is what we try and do here on Things That Bug Me, is find very different ways of looking at things. That is actually one of the main points of what we do here. So anyway, thank you very much, Mayor, for coming on and sharing
You're
a thing that bugs
very
you. Please
welcome.
do come back another time and do the other thing that bugs you. And I'm sure it wouldn't take too long to come up with a very long list of other things that bug
I'm
you. I mean,
sure, I'm quite sure. I've definitely got another one to do with roads, but
well, as my mother, you are obviously welcome on any time, as many times as you want. You have an open ticket to come on as many times as you want.
right.
Okay.
Okie dokie.
Lovely to see you. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.